All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ben Zunkler. I'm on the board of the Hideo Suzaki Foundation. I've had the pleasure of working with our design grant teams over the past several months, and I'm excited for them to share a little bit about their work with all of you. So before we get started, a little bit about the Hideo Suzaki Foundation. It was established in 2000 in honor of Hideo Suzaki after his passing. Hideo was a Japanese-American landscape architect who came of age in World War II. He was internationally respected as a designer, teacher, and mentor, and he became a leading figure in America's 20th century modern design movement and a pioneer of the concept of collaborative design. We believe that design has the power to address the most urgent challenges facing us, from social equity to environmental resilience. Design is an agent of change. And yet, access to design for the communities who need it the most is often limited. We believe the power of design belongs to all of us. And in working with our design grantees, I know that they believe the same thing. So we work to advance equity in design, supporting community-based organizations with funding and access to design practitioners, amplifying voices, and working towards systemic change through events and discussions. Engaging students in career exploration through internships, camps, and after-school programs. This is captured in our 3 pillars: research, public programming, and design education, and partnerships that span across all of them with community organizations, volunteers, and design practitioners. Today, we're going to focus on our research pillar and specifically our design grants. In this last cohort, we asked teams to focus on one of or a few of these 6 key areas, either creative community building, new models for housing, innovation in transit and access to mobility choices, innovation in health and well-being, proactive approaches to climate adaptation, and new uses for AI in design. So without any further ado, I'm excited to hand it over to our design grants teams to share a little bit more about their experience and their work so far. First up, we have Andrea and Mark with Culinary Commons.
This so the folks online can hear? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrea Catania. This is my colleague, Mark Araujo. And we're going to do what I like to call a little East Coast storytelling, where it's like, I got to tell you this story to tell you this other story. So you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so we started a food justice nonprofit called EquiTable about 2.5 years ago. And we really believe in the human rights of food. So thinking about the planet, thinking about individuals, thinking about communities, and how can we build more just and sustainable food systems? And how do we co-design those food systems with the people that are actually involved and the stakeholders in a very multidisciplinary approach to the food system in a kind of systems thinking kind of way. And then the big thing that we focused on with the design grant is our project called Culinary Commons, which is all about establishing public kitchens as critical public infrastructure. And we'll talk a little bit more about these public kitchens, these community kitchens. So Culinary Commons are communal kitchen spaces that are free and open to the public. That means that you can come and cook, you can come and hang out, you can share about your cultural recipes and cultural heritage. There's spaces for activism, for organizing for more sustainable food systems, just food systems. They're also really fun and exciting and just contagious in terms of how exciting the community is to talk about food and use food as a catalyst. And this is a picture of a 3-month iteration in Dorchester and Upham's Corner that was open up 3 days a week, 3 to 7 p.m. And the community really had a say in what went on in this public kitchen in terms of the programming, the design, and what they viewed as critically important to their community. just a little kind of context and grounding us in what we've done so far. And we look back at 2023, starting with pop-up public kitchens and looking at different neighborhoods across the city of Boston to see if this is a viable option for those neighborhoods, and doing it for one day. So it's very, risk adverse and working with different partners across the city. From that, we learned that semi-permanence and kind of exercising this muscle is really important. So that's the 3-month activation that we talked about, where there was over 1,000 community members that came into that space on Columbia Road. And then 2025, 2026 is really about permanence. How can we establish these public kitchens in different neighborhoods in Boston, but really make it a part of that infrastructure, make it a new type of typology in the city of Boston. So we opened up our first permanent public kitchen in Charlestown about a year and a half ago. So that community has really, they've made that part of their daily life. And we've been learning a lot in terms of how do we take that model? How do we not just helicopter into different neighborhoods, but how do we take all our learnings and say, hey, this is what works, this is what doesn't. How does your public kitchen look like in your neighborhood? And is permanence even something that we're thinking about? So that has been really important in terms of this design grant cycle, to think through the next steps of permanence and all the things that is involved with that. So yeah, so it brings us to 2026, 2027, which is about replication, but not helicoptering. And so this is one of the renderings that was, done by some of the Sasakians to kind of give us a couple more tools in our tool belt to kind of showcase to the communities and the people that we're working with. This is how it might look like if it's an open space or a white box or something that we could play in, and how could we change and manipulate, and depending on the communities and needs or desires, that design is going to change. But we wanted to get a couple tools under our belt to really tell that story and bolster and be, increase the professionalism of the design. So that's really exciting. And obviously a lot of the pictures that you're seeing are what's there in real life. So I think both of those options for communities, for officials, for funders, for whoever it may be, provides a good opportunity to get into the work.
So we thought, since this final, we're putting a bow on it today, and it's about a year from when we pitched in the first place and when we were selected for this, we should talk about what we set out to do. I think that's important. What we imagined in the beginning and where we are now. And so this is what we came to Sasaki with. This is what we said we'd like to do before we knew anything. We were just outsiders looking into this program. And so this is what we envisioned for the funds. This is what we envisioned for how the team with all their different areas of expertise might be able to support us in this work from the Sasaki side. We imagined for the cohort of the other design teams and what we would hope to collaborate on, and the outcome. So how could we move toward the kind of overall narrative, and what are the components of it? One of the areas we kept is like a little bit of this mystery. There were things there were known knowns, the things we knew to ask for. And then we were relying on the expertise of the folks here who came to our charrettes, or who work with the foundation and other collaborators to say, what are we not asking for? What is something that would not occur to us when we don't have this area of expertise? We're not planners and or architects or these kinds of things. So what is the currency people are dealing in? What are tools that will compel different audiences in the language that they are compelled in? And so things that in the last year or so we had 3 charrettes, those were the themes. And we had some repeat offenders, people who joined us at each one. So that was nice. That was good to see some of the same faces. And then with each one, people brought their individual expertise. And so we kind of framed each one. The planning one was a little more exploratory. How can we have these planning for different avenues of how to build, like a new build versus a retrofit versus some kind of expansion? Or with the fundraising, we kind of focused on what are these creative ways straight local need and community support. And so how can we tap into resources that may not have occurred to us right away? And then the storytelling piece, less about telling the story of the kinds of things. It's really rich with story. You saw some of those beautiful photos of people cooking and eating and enjoying together. But how do we tell this story in a way that can compel different audiences who may be able to bring support beyond the financial piece? And so we held several co-design meetings, about 19 meetings with the community over the last year or so. A lot of the funds we put in the budget to make sure that there was a good accessibility component. Things, as Ben mentioned when he opened, the kinds of barriers that prevent people from being able to participate in civic life. And so things like making sure we serve food at meetings. We're talking about opening a public kitchen. To invite people to a meeting and you don't serve any food, that's crazy. Things like childcare, things like language access, these types of things. So those barriers to entry, making sure that we're not hosting meetings in the middle of the workday or at odd times and that kind of thing. So those yielded quite a bit. I could tell you for the next hour about those kinds of meetings, but more on that later. And then moving on to the white paper piece, please stand by, work in progress. We're kind of aggregating all of the pieces that we have over this last year to bring that to life now. So. And then, of course, there's lots of things that cannot be quantified. This is rich with the qualitative piece for any of the researchers that are out there. So some of the sharing the work is a part of the work, going to conferences and talking with different audiences, whether they're academic or other practitioners. This is one of the design committees that is over in Charlestown. They steward the space. People eating and cooking together, being able to write things about third spaces and taking part in zines. And we talked about this at one of our charrettes. How can we find creative ways to compel audiences that aren't maybe moved by a project brief or these kinds of things? So, and plus I know designers love a sticky note, so I put that one up there for you. Some new partners and existing partners that we've nurtured our relationships with, and new ones that we've taken on in the last year and that will continue in the rest of 2026. And so I'm kind of mirroring this as we talk about the pitch as we came to Sasaki and who our new strategic partners are. And there's some familiar faces and some new ones. So being able to fold in a youth justice component and make sure that the kind of co-design work is hearing voices of all ages and is multi-generational, and being able to tap into the research component of things, being able to tap into people who work in government and policy, other organizations that are food and food adjacent. We know sometimes that the nonprofit world can be a little squirrely, or sometimes we're fighting over funding or these kinds of things. That's not our stance. We love you. We care about you. We want you to also succeed. So we don't have beef with anybody. And so if you want to collaborate with us, let's bring something to life, whether it's directly food related or it fits in some other way. I'll also say this is a non-exhaustive list before I move on. And we also appreciate some of the specific work that Lucinda and Miriam, who were a part of the Design Foundation's other funding programs, the work that they were able to put forward to this, and also AC, who couldn't be here today, but she put a lot of extra effort and attention into this work, and we appreciate her for that. So one last call for what's kind of still needed. These are space and funding. Those are always true. So if you have those things, come forward. If you're shy, we'll talk to you later. But always these kinds of things, the architectural renderings that we have, these kind of first drafts of that Mark was talking about earlier, ways that we can visualize data in different ways that compel different folks. If you noticed the slide before and you were looking at that and you were thinking that those probably should have been a bunch of logos, you're absolutely right. And those are exactly the things I don't have time to do. And so if you are a graphic designer, I'm sure you have a beautiful eye for that. Please come forward. So any directed introductions that can be made, and We know that there is some archivists that work with Sasaki as well, and to think about how we can create these storytelling artifacts. And like we said, always thinking of collaboration and how we can be together. So let's bring something to life. Thank you, everybody. Questions after each one. Yep. I'm also an internal processor, so if you want to write us later, that's also fine. Leave this up one more moment. We're all old friends by now.
What are y'all excited about for this summer, for the fall? Yeah, what's on your minds right now and getting you fired up?
Yeah, a few things on the horizon for this summer. So collaborating with the East Boston Farmers Market, which is very full circle because we met them when we first started working together at the city of Boston. And we were trying to reimagine what farmers markets could be. And this was the project that we had. It was called What's Cookin'? Cute. And so we met the East Boston Farmers Market then, and now they've approached us again and they want to think about how to activate their space. And so that's kind of beautiful to see, all right, these 3 years later from a different project and a different life, you've reached out to us again and to think about how we could bring their space to life. So we'll be helping them activate their farmers market. It's starting, I think it starts next week because their first one, but so that's exciting. And then the Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition, we also met them through a series of events in the past, but they want to do some youth food justice programming. And so they are very interested in their like specific neighborhood and their community and understanding different aspects of food justice, sometimes food access, sometimes cultural relevance, these kinds of things. And so we have this kind of multifaceted food justice programming talking about the history of, you know, how redlining affects the fact that you don't have a grocery store in your neighborhood and that is related. So we're going to be with them this summer. We've been to a couple of conferences already, and so we've been sharing and traveling a little bit. What else is going on?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff in East Boston, the pop-up models, and I think we have a really big interest in. I mean, we're both residents of East Boston, and those connections to the farmers market, to Eastie Farm, to some of the public open spaces. But how do we pop up? How do we bring the mobile kitchen carts? How do we do the same kind of exercise of pop-ups to semi-permanence to permanence? And we've been also keeping our eyes on a lot of the vacant storefronts in Eastie, and how do we I had a conversation with Tristan Rock and trying to understand who's the big real estate player and what do they want, what do they need, and what are they looking for. So how do we potentially tap into some of those vacant storefronts and maybe pop up for 3 months and try to see, you know, capital campaign and funding. We also received a pretty great grant from NIFA, Spatial Justice Grant, which I think you got one a couple years ago. But that's key for us opening up this East Boston public kitchen slash food justice hub. So that gives us the funding to really keep pushing and, you know, put dollars where our hearts are. And then we also have some other, because EquiTable does more than just public kitchens and food-based public infrastructure. And we've been working a lot on trying to understand the Boston food ecosystem and trying to map where food happens, essentially, the ins and outs, not recreate, you know, a food insecurity map or anything like that, but really try to understand the totality of food in the city of Boston. So we had some collaborations with Boston University with their, you know, their big Jenga building and the computer science folks, and have some potential classes and support from students there. Also working with the City Science Group at the Media Lab at MIT to try to understand, and they could help us visualize some of that data that we're bringing in to kind of think through forecasting and what putting in a public kitchen or co-ops or grocery stores or increasing the regional, local, opportunities for markets, et cetera, really kind of bolster the things that we're doing as EquiTable. So that's really exciting. So all these things are food related. And since food is so intersectional, it kind of just adds into one another. And then we probably have a bunch of other things. And potentially, we've been talking about collaborating with Shade. So maybe this is the moment. Yeah, and CommonWealth Kitchen, of course.
We do have a lot of kudos online and also a couple questions. I'm going to just read them and then you can answer them all at once, I think.
If we know who
Aiden-
they are, that would be great.
Yes. So Aiden Borer is curious to know of any lessons learned that you would share with others taking on a similar co-design approach. If you have any examples of ways that community input fundamentally changed the end results or designs. And then Amrit also asked, alternatively, how has design thinking changed your approach or process? And Courtney also said CommonWealth Kitchen would love to collaborate.
Wow, famous. I think with the co-design piece, like the key thing in my mind when I think of co-design is making sure you're not helicoptering in to a place or parachuting in, I guess, if you're not going to be extracted. To make sure that you're not saying, yes, here's your public kitchen, all your issues are solved, you're very welcome, thanks, I'm on my way. I don't think that's ever appropriate, like for any project. And so with the co-design component, I think that's key number one. Also, a good reminder that we can address people's needs and their desires. Like sometimes when we talk about communal kitchen spaces that are free and open to the public, a question we get asked often, especially in more like venture-y kind of circles, is like, what problem does this solve? Well, the food system is full of problems. They need to be solved. Many of the solutions are already known. And this solves some in some ways. But there's an important reminder that we can enjoy things. We can have things that bring us joy and we can be together and cook together. It's our right to gather in public. It's our right to have public space to do so and not have the commons privatized and rented back to us. It's our right to have delicious food and to eat together and to like enjoy life. So there are many solutions that public kitchens provide, and it can meet many desires too. Like if your desire is to learn how to make cannoli, I'll bring somebody to the public kitchen, we'll make cannoli together. So the point being, when we're in community and we're doing this co-design piece, it doesn't have to be all about utility. We can bring in the needs and address them and also the desires. Maybe you could repeat Amrit's question. It was about design thinking.
Yeah. So I think design thinking is critically important to the co-design process too, but how can you be a little bit more experiential? How can you bring in different exercises where you can really flex your imagination and think about what's at stake? So like co-design and design thinking, what's the decision we're trying to make today? And is it better suited if we're doing stickies or drawing or imagining, or we're sitting around in a circle doing kind of popcorn style things? But there's so many strategies and toolkits in design thinking that are really flex the muscle. And then when you haven't studied design, you've exercised these things anyways. So it's just like the different language and bringing in community into that process. And also as a designer, like the power of design and the power that everything has been designed, so everything can be redesigned. And I think that is super important. And for a lot of community members, they say, yeah, of course, right? This building, these things, even the trees around us, we've had a hand in molding and shaping. So these new types of public infrastructures are totally possible. And I think it's just trying that first thing out. And then when it comes to prototyping and iterating, that's an incredible part of the public kitchens because in a lot of them, things are flexing and changing every single month. There might be a desire for more food justice or more organizing, more activism. The physical space, people might say, we want some softer seating so we could just hang out and talk about, our cultural heritage and our recipes. Or we were trying to do, we're doing like this podcast, cultural storytelling, remembrance thing, and everybody just sitting around a table and having a conversation. And we're not so focused on the cooking, but we're focused on other aspects of the food system. So it's critical to really listen and understand community and then act on what is being said. So we're not extractive, and sometimes it's exhausting community engagement process because you talk, and then nobody sees what you're actually, what you've asked for. So always, and I think as we work in different communities, why we talked about East Boston is it's our first step. So we're kind of in that same process, but we've done it a couple times now where it's really exciting and we've learned, and we could also bring other people that are co-designers that are working in other communities to share their experience. So then it's kind of a double, kind of double dipping and say, hey, you who've done this process, come in and try to teach or learn from other communities. So that's really exciting.
We get them all. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, loved, listening and its interplay with design and how that leads to change, and also this sense that we deserve to be able to desire things and joy. Yes, beautiful. Okay. Jimmy is helping us set up for Courtney, who's going to be sharing from Zoom. So all you folks on Zoom are lucky you're getting directly from the source online. Just bear with us as we get it set up. Are you going to control the...
Fantastic. Can everybody hear me? Oh, wonderful. I'll wait for the signal to make sure that, all right, I see the signal. Fantastic. Great.
Yeah, you're all
So,
set, Courtney.
oh, thank you so much, Jimmy. So firstly, I'd like to just say hello and just express my deep admiration and support for the foundation as well as the other organizations in this cohort. I'm furiously writing down notes from the last presentation. I am so honored to have the opportunity to outline our work together today. And I do think that this is not an ending, this is a beginning. And I think every member of this cohort, we will continue to work together and collaborate and transform our communities step by step. So I'm feeling very inspired and so grateful to everyone for their insights and their guidance and their expertise as we have been working through this together. I wanted to start out by just talking a little bit about this project, the Roxbury Food Truck Park, by giving a little bit of background. The COVID-19 pandemic severely disrupted Boston's food truck industry, reducing viable vending locations, threatening a critical entry point for food entrepreneurs, particularly those from marginalized communities. Food trucks have long provided a low barrier pathway to business ownership and growth, often serving as the launch pad for brick and mortar establishments. In today's economic landscape, this model has to evolve beyond downtown Boston to better serve neighborhoods facing economic and food access disparities. CommonWealth Kitchen is host to almost 20 and growing food trucks who have been and are continuing to pivot in how they work within this new economic reality. Dedicated places for these businesses aligned with community programs that reflect the unique and vibrant offerings of each neighborhood have been wildly successful. And I will pause here just to say we're seeing a little bit of that with FIFA, but I'll also say that I wouldn't mind seeing more of that. Trends and studies have indicated that interest in these clustered activities is expected to continue in the coming years. I'm going to jump to the next slide here, the project overview. Great, thank you, Jimmy. So during the grant period, CommonWealth Kitchen collaborated with food truck members and Sasaki's design team to explore the potential for food truck parks across Boston through compelling visualizations and experiential design concepts. So the project resulted in 2 site-specific layout concepts for a food truck and park in Boston, along with some guidelines for replicating the model in other neighborhoods, or as our executive director, Jen Fagel, likes to say, food truck park in a box. Our shared goal for this project was to create a plan and a path to activate underutilized public spaces in historically underserved Boston communities, increasing access to healthy, culturally inclusive, and affordable food options. At the same time, this initiative can create sustainable economic opportunities for local food truck entrepreneurs, many of whom who live and work in these neighborhoods, strengthening both community food access and local economies. For the next slide, our project updates, just to give you a little bit of background. The timing of this actually worked wonderfully in informing this project. In fall of 2025, alongside the Franklin Park Zoo's Boston Lights exhibit, CommonWealth Kitchen launched Part, which was an outdoor, unique gathering space that brought together neighbors and visitors while creating new business opportunities for local food entrepreneurs. Featuring food, games, and activities for all ages, Parked served as a successful pilot that informed this project with Sasaki. And I do want to pause here to give the CommonWealth Kitchen development and marketing team a bit of a nod of appreciation for coming up with the concept and branding and being heavily involved in creating feedback loops so that we could utilize this pilot project to inform this work with Sasaki. Building on lessons learned from the pilot, CommonWealth Kitchen's now looking to expand and formalize a food truck park in the future by launching operations earlier in the season, improving site visibility, enhancing infrastructure. That was really, really key. In fact, you'll see later how much time we spent on things like including signage, lighting, seating, cleaner power sources, and integrating programming with community partners to increase attendance and strengthen overall community engagement. Project outcomes, excuse me, our deliverables included digital renderings, engaging stakeholders, including CommonWealth Kitchen food truck businesses, and a timeline for documenting the design process, which was very important to us. These materials are intended to position a food truck park concept for inclusion in CommonWealth Kitchen's future strategic planning discussions and created engaging fundraising assets to inspire support from potential sponsors and municipal partners. The next slide, and I will then turn over the next few slides to Jimmy and our project team there on the ground, is really highlighting our brainstorming and sketching charrette. So we had a handful of folks from CommonWealth Kitchen's board, staff, and food truck members. This was a facilitated collaboration with the volunteer designers from Sasaki. And our goal was to draft a site concept and layout for Boston's first ever permanent and semi-permanent food truck park at a specific site, along with planning and design guidelines for replicating it at multiple locations. And I will also say we had some wonderful snacks to enjoy. And so the next slide is another showing that design cohort work with the Sasaki team. And there we see Daryl Moore, our shared kitchen manager, who works very closely with our food truck businesses. We had a second online design charrette with food truck businesses, and they provided some wonderful feedback and insights that helped inform the project. And for this next slide, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Jimmy, to talk a little bit about the design charrette and the process and where we landed.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jimmy. I'm program coordinator at the Hideo Sasaki Foundation. Worked closely with the CommonWealth Kitchen team in developing their project, and it was a super cool team. We had a lot of great volunteers, both from Sasaki, but also externally. And we were at the Charrette to develop concepts for a food truck park in Boston. And the first Charrette, super engaging. We had two groups led by or facilitated by designers from Sasaki. Credit, I want to give credit to Ben, to Eve, to Gift, to Bianchi, who are not here, but I just wanted to say thank you to those people who volunteered for the Charrette. They worked together with staff and board members from the CommonWealth Kitchen to develop ideas. Basically, the guiding question was, what do we want a food truck park, or what can a permanent food truck park look like Austin in a site-specific context? And the site was a little parklet, or a sizable parklet, a medium-sized parklet in Franklin, just right next to the Franklin Park Zoo in Roxbury. And so these are some of the sketches that were the live sketches that were developed, and as well as some notes that were taken by note takers in the team. General concepts of thinking about shade in the summer heat, thinking about play areas for kids, thinking about ways to introduce community arts and community identity into the design, where was also included in the sketches, as well as spaces for storage and for engaging with the members of the community that visit the park. And this is the second group's sketch, where they mostly focused on the transition from a temporary pop-up kind of food truck parks setup to a more permanent one. So on the left or on the right, it depends on where am I facing. Yeah, on the right, you can see the more temporary one where the food truck parks are going to be on the western side of the park. And then transitioning here, you can see the ideas for more permanent spaces that also include like a community kitchen. Shout out to folks at Culinary Commons as well. I'm sure they were part of the ideating for that process. But then you can see a permanent food truck park in the north area of the park, and a more community-centered picnicking area in the center. So these were just the initial sketches and ideas that came from the team and the designers in the first Charrette. And some more volunteers, Alexis and other Sasaki volunteers, gave feedback and developed those sketches into bubble diagrams, where the space is programmed in different areas: the food truck park area, the seating areas, the shaded stage, there's a kids zone, there's a farmer's market, and there's table vendors all across the site. And so it was just basically, what were the ideas that were generated from the charrettes, and how can we represent them in a way that might be digestible to like community members just looking at it straight up. And so we use this diagrams to engage the food truck park members in the second charrette, where they gave more feedback about what they wanted from the space, but also what their priorities were. And that's where we got a lot of good feedback about tailoring the park more for older audiences rather than kids. So maybe not necessarily focusing too much on the kids zone, because according to them, kids don't spend money. And so getting the older folks into the park to be able to engage more with the food truck members themselves, and purchase more food and have built community around food, was more a priority for the food truck park members than we had originally thought. They also prioritized lighting, because in their minds, they want to be operating more later in the day than early afternoon. So rather than thinking too much about shade, what can we do with a stage that encourages like events, or encourages live music, or things that can bring people to the space, as well as putting a bar somewhere in there for the plus 21 folks, were some of the ideas that the food truck park members gave us as they were looking at these diagrams and thinking through the possibilities for the park. With that in mind, the final deliverable that we were able to come up with together with the team from CommonWealth Kitchen and our volunteers from Sasaki was more of a precedent rendering, not a full site rendering, but more of what could these spaces look like, the different areas of the park, and what are the different visions we can have for each part
of the park. And so we took some precedents and then we put them in different sites of the park to help the CommonWealth Kitchen team as well as their food truck park members think and envision what could be there and how it could look and how people can interact with the space. This is a second one for a different alternative with different precedents. And yeah, I think that's, did I miss anything, Courtney, or is there anything else you'd like to touch on? Alexis, would you want to add more to, okay. So Courtney,
Great.
I hand it back to you to
Thank
round
you.
up the, yep.
Thank you, Jimmy. And yes, so we ended up with these incredible drawings after lots of rounds of design, as Jimmy stated, and ensuring that stakeholder feedback was incorporated. There are ongoing conversations underway right now around utilizing public spaces for this kind of pop-up park, currently underway between CommonWealth Kitchen, the City of Boston, the state of Massachusetts, as well as some of our ongoing partner organizations and community neighborhood groups. And we look forward to rolling in these findings and these drawings as part of our strategic planning process for the next 3 to 5 years, which will kick off with the board and executive leadership at the end of this year. I also just want to add briefly one of the learnings that we had from this experience at CommonWealth Kitchen, and this was really driven by our member businesses as well as Jen's oversight here, is the importance of ensuring as much of this was green, clean, green energy or clean environmental, with a clean environmental focus. So we had lots of discussions around our diesel generators that are used by our trucks and what are the alternatives. Jimmy mentioned shade earlier. That was another piece that was noted as something that was important for our businesses, to have places for people to sit down, to cool off, to ensure that these were truly accessible, thoughtful spaces. And because they're public spaces, there is a saying, you you want to take everything out that you bring in with you. You take only memories, and make sure that you're not leaving anything other than footprints. So the environmental piece really led a lot of this design work. And I feel we feel at CommonWealth Kitchen, it's positioned us very well for further conversations about how we can proceed with this going forward. I just want to wrap up, if we could go to the next, the final slide, to just state in closing, again, our gratitude to the Sasaki Foundation, our partners, our community stakeholders. I also want to recognize Jimmy and Anna for their incredible support. Ben, this was an incredible experience for us. And not only did this set us up well for future work, it actually resulted in some new potential partnerships, not only with the other presenters here today, but with other organizations throughout the city that I think will really be incredible to collaborate with so that we can meet those shared goals that we have. I am inspired by the presenters before to just also state that as a nonprofit in a very difficult funding moment, that we are grateful for the support of the Sasaki Foundation, and we would welcome any ongoing support. If volunteerism, whether it's volunteerism, we are looking for board members, or you'd like to become involved in this initiative or others, we would be delighted to have you. So please do keep in touch. We also have very active social media channels and would love to encourage everyone to share, like, support, comment. We love resharing posts from partner organizations that are doing mission-aligned work, and we encourage all of you to follow us there. Partners are key. Collaboration is key, especially in this moment. And so with that, I will wrap up for questions. And thank you again for this time today.
Okay, no question.
Hi, Courtney. It sounds like you're getting a lot of kudos in the Zoom chat, but no questions yet. But I'll encourage Zoom folks also to come up with questions. I mean, I've seen your work progress, and I know how much you and the team have put into discussing these ideas, and exciting to see it or to hear you talk about how it's going to influence your strategic plan. My question is, did going through this process of illustrating and putting program on a diagram and talking with your particularly your business members, if those business members see the kind of weight of their inputs in changing the design, and then this design being part of your strategic plan. And I'm curious, like, how they see their contribution to the overall arc of Commonwealth Kitchen.
Oh, thank you for that question, Ben. As soon as we got these designs back, we actually sent them to Daryl, who works very closely with our food truck businesses, as well as a few folks that participated, who have food truck businesses from the Second Charrette, and they were incredibly inspired. In fact, it led to sort of a flurry of additional ideas, which was great. We continue to learn more. And what I think was so helpful about their specific input was, for us, certainly for me, the assumptions we had about layout and access and community programming. While there was certainly alignment for a lot of it, there was so much that we didn't know. And so having the community engagement, the food truck businesses who are out there doing festivals, they are, showing up downtown after the nightclubs get out. They're doing these kinds of events, and they are the experts in this area. So to have that opportunity to do a very deep, granular dive around flow and seating and waste management and water access and lighting and security, and also pulling everything from the community perspective. We had lots of great conversations about community programming and partnerships. Um, and I certainly encourage my colleagues on the call from the marketing office to jump in. Feel free to jump in the chat to share more. But that really was something that I think will also inform our strategic planning. Is that what are the community partnerships, and how can we be better and more intentional around basing this work, supporting this work, but being led by the community to launch this. So that was incredibly helpful and informative.
Hi there. This is Marianne from the Hideo Sasaki Foundation. Thank you so much for a great presentation. It's wonderful to see the process and just the design ideas and hear about what was learned along the way. From this process, I wanted to ask about ways that this project maybe helped identify, or ways that you can evaluate future sites where food trucks could be, as far as site selection, knowing where people already gravitate to, access and so forth. Can you speak a little bit about future sites that might be identified for food trucks?
Oh, thank you, Marianne. Yes, I'm so glad you asked that. As an organization, we have enjoyed a wonderful partnership with the city of Boston. They actually provided a grant to support the Franklin Park pilot. And I think as a result of this work, as we're moving forward with strategic planning and thinking about how a food truck park in a box, what that forgive me if I'm not using the right language, sort of template would look like, as a tool that can be shared as a resource with members of the community, um, to provide a uh, connection or conduit for anyone who is within a neighborhood and says, wow, I'd love to have one of these here. We've got a pocket park around the corner with some off-street parking, or, this could be a great concept for us. We work with these neighborhoods. What we really want to do here, Marianne, is we want people to be able to come to us to make the process easy, to let folks drive and inform where we can pop up, and to work hand in hand on community specific programming that is led by whether it's a neighborhood association, a school, a neighborhood group, so that it is really driven by the community. That's how we'll be successful. So the tools, kind of the input output process of that, I think we'll need to develop a little bit more, and we'll be talking to the city of Boston because they do have some of these tools in place for community engagement, and feedback around public spaces. But considering the focus on the importance of public spaces and our shared responsibility to ensure that they are accessible and truly able to be enjoyed by all, it does have to come from, I think, the community for how we would identify those places. That's very important. I mean, we have great ideas for where things can pop up. And there's probably some there's some way to kind of find alignment, but I'm certain there are things we are not thinking of that if we are going to achieve our goal of truly creating equity for food truck businesses and being a value add as a nonprofit, and supporting other great community groups that are doing incredible work around programming and education and healthcare, whatever it is, we need to sort of switch that equation.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Hello.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much, Courtney. Loved hearing about the technical knowledge that your member businesses hold and how you're incorporating them to future work, as well as this partnership with community organizations. Really amazing. Okay, well, we're going to hand it right over to Jeff with Shade to have our last design grant presentation. So yeah, hope you enjoyed so far. Here's Jeff.
Hey, everyone. Just a sort of contextual note, everything you will see in this presentation is directly responsible, or had we not gotten the Design Fellows grant, I do not know where we would be. We would definitely not be here. And it's not even like a second degree sort of like, thing. It's like everything that we can speak to that's on the horizon and that's sort of currently standing in Senate Park in Cambridge is because of this grant. So I'm really glad Samadi and some of the teams did a good job presenting back in the day. So there's 3 videos, and hopefully that'll do some of contextual work, and then some reflection from the designer, architect John Morrison, an old friend, and then some questions and stuff. So, okay, here we go. Project overview, Shade. I think we're trying to do teen-led places in public spaces this summer, like basically now. And I think maybe governing this is, can we develop an affordable and compelling or interesting youth designed, youth built, and youth operated place to address rising heat and falling mental health? I think for us, what was so exciting about this year is, okay, we kind of had the youth designed piece worked out prior to this grant. We kind of had the youth operated piece worked out. Youth built. I'm excited to show some video from that from this week. And here's okay. Oh, wait. I realized. Oh, okay. So I was playing with an earlier version of the. Here we are. Project updates. There are going to be 2 movies. So what do we do? We executed some planned growth. So, we had a goal of creating shade this summer, but now it is happening. In December, we had a really terrific charrette that led to a couple different meetings that I'm going to show a video from. But that charrette, which was organized by Ben and Alexis, was transformative. So we got to know public health folks. We got to know Boston Parks and Rec folks. We got to know Youth Build Boston folks. And everything, again, that you'll be seeing is an outgrowth of that. So one thing that came specifically is sort of new growth. We had always hoped to sort of move and spread, I think that became a possibility. Through the charrette, we got to know the folks at Moakley Park from the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. And together, we applied for a Metropolitan Area Planning Commission grant to do shade next summer at Moakley Park. And are we going to get it? I don't know, but we had a strong application, and that was great. And you cannot apply unless you have a municipal partner. So I think it was, which I understand, but I think speaks to the sort of critical nature of forming the network that can then open new doors for what's possible. Lastly, I think what's interesting about this grant, to me at least, is the investment that is both in time and in money that Sasaki makes. And I think that and that's what makes the Design Fellows Grant. I heard somebody say, is that the right name for this program? I'm not sure. I don't think it captures what is delivered. And as one of the fewer adults devoting a lot of too much time to shade, it's really terrific to talk to other professionals at Sasaki and the larger network. So I just want to sort of underline the capacity that Sasaki has provided. This is a video of the charrette, and I think it hopefully will do a little bit of work of explaining why we do exist. And in this video, you will see this office. You'll see Ben talking eloquently, welcoming us. I think you'll see our why, which is 40% of Boston public school students report persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. And so being able to have someone from the public health department around the same table as Sasakians and creative folks from the climate resilience department in Boston and other Sasakians and Pedro from the Office of Youth Engagement and Advancement, Boston, all being creative, I think was great. And then finally, Neil Daniel, who is from Youth Build Boston, getting to know him. And I think we all left that meeting energized. And that was terrific. So I'm gonna try and go to the next slide here. I think what became clear is that when you gather, so we had a meeting that followed, and this was in the Boston Transportation Department. And this was, I think one thing we learned is that there's work in getting young people at the table with folks that professionally work with young people, around with folks that work with public health and people that are managing our streets and public spaces. And when people are in the same room, something good happens. So we learned a little bit of a recipe. You won't hear audio, but this is worth showing. So this is from this week. So we built something this week, and this is what we built. And this is Nathan explaining why he wanted to take a before and after video because he found it pretty inspiring. um, he really did. He put it way better. Oh yeah. Oh no. Oh yes. Oh no. Someone gets Jimmy, if you could help, that would be yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not great. Okay. And I can all right, there we go. There we go. That's a lot. Work. There was Alexis. Youth Build students. What you didn't hear was our builder was like, last year this took like 12 days at least, but work days. What we saw here is 3 days of work and was game changing for us. Maybe John, can I call you up here to share maybe some of the, because that was a lot of the big learnings this year.
Yeah, I'm John Morrison, designer and architect who helped design this. Based on some of the feedback we got from working with Jeff's teams, I think there were a lot of lessons learned this year, some of it at the more pragmatic level of detailing and how things come together. But I think the bigger picture was the just recognizing that for this to be a viable project, it has to be quick, light, and relatively fast. Meaning we need to be in and out of a place in a week, right? Just given the compressed nature of summer schedules, that this is a seasonal structure, like it really does need to be easy to assemble, easy to disassemble. And while last year's versions, which you saw photos of earlier, saw videos of earlier, from a design standpoint was pretty successful, it was way overly complicated. It weighed too much. It was overly braced. We had multiple levels and ramps and a relatively small footprint, which caused, like, as you can imagine, lots of different levels, lots of complication, lots more parts. So this was really like a lesson in simplification. And honestly, I think it's one of the few rare instances where value engineering actually helped improve the design rather than feels like it's tearing out your soul. But and working with Youth Build really actually kind of changed the game for us too in a lot of ways, where it means a lot having them participate in it. And the nice thing in talking with Andrew and Darius from Youth Build, and Darius is their I guess he's one of their project managers or their construction managers, but he was on site because they're understaffed at this point, and we're so lucky to have him. The guy has a lot of experience. But in talking to him and Andrew, it's like, this isn't real construction, right? Real construction, for those of us in the design and construction industry, is slow, painful, sometimes a horrible grind, and you rarely actually you get to see the end results of your project, but that's years later, right? Like years after conception. This is fast, quick, and within a couple of days, these kids saw direct, tangible results of something that they've been building, right? And it's immediate. And I think particularly for kids this age, like I've taught architecture both undergrad and grad level, for kids in their teens and 20s, like having that sort of immediate, sorry, for kids in their teens and 20, having that sort of immediate recognition and really just kind of immediate gratification of seeing what they've built in person, in their own eyes. They're going to come back in a month and see it active and other teams using it. I think that's kind of invaluable, right? Like it gives them a sense of a relatively complicated process and like a condensed and simplified form that they can kind of use to then apply to other projects as they move forward in the future. Yeah, and I think the other thing to kind of note, like this is team designed and team built, but one of the coolest things I did last year was come back and take photographs in the fall. And, you know, I went in the morning to get morning light and kind of went periodically throughout the day over the course of 2 days. And you really saw how this is just a piece of infrastructure that the community can leverage and use. And yeah, at certain times of day, the teens are going to be doing their events and playing music and being loud and whatever. But, you know, in the morning, there were guys from the local Islamic center doing their prayers on top of shade. Around noon, like mothers and their strollers and their kids are sitting under shade, playing, eating their lunch, laying out picnic blankets. And then at night, college students are sitting there smoking weed and swinging the swings. And like, you know, but it really is like, it became kind of this community infrastructure that not just the teens, but everybody around was engaging. And I think that's kind of the power of this sort of thing, is that unintended use is the best use, right? Like it's kind of like with the teens, we're creating this infrastructure for the public to actually engage and use. Anyway, I'll pass back to Jeff after that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, John. I think there's a certain way in which that this project, perhaps unlike some of the other, like John's a full-time designer, right? I have a background in design, so this is maybe the most designy of them all. I think just to end up the presentation, you know, growth and change. I think we applied to this grant with the hope of okay, can we make this a product, right? And you know, I was pretty far ahead over my skis, right? Like we weren't there yet. I think this year and what we've learned from construction is much better and feels much closer. I think Andrew, our former builder, he was saying like, look, if you can start on a Monday and weather permitting be done on a Friday, and that's your sort of case to your municipality, like, all right, I get it. That sounds good, right? And Youth Build's going to build it, okay, right? I think we just sort of hadn't had those sort of pieces worked out yet, and a lot, yeah, comes to simplicity. So growth and impact. It'll be interesting to see how it will be used this summer. Shade is a couple different things. There's a whole teen program that I'm not speaking to. Cambridge has something called the Mayor's Summer Youth Employment Program. So this will be staffed Tuesday to Friday, 3 to 8 p.m. For 6 weeks. So they're going to do events like basketball tournaments. They're going to do like some crafts. They're going to make a mess. They're going to have fun, but they're going to run it. And it'll be interesting and excited to sort of hand over the keys. So yeah, the structure will be, we'd love to have you out. And I think that's it.
Hi. How have people responded to the process when it comes, like people that have been involved, like especially the young people? How do you feel that it has impacted them from beginning to end? You know, have you had young people more interested in design or construction fields or different areas based on just being part of this project?
That's a great question. I think Shade is very young. This is our third go around. The teens haven't actually been that interested in the design, like pretty interested. But I think what we found is they're super interested in is an opportunity to feel like they're given back and that they're being energized and acknowledged for giving back. Like to be able to be recognized. Like Alan, who was at this event, he sort of got this reputation of like giving out popcorn, right? Because we give away a lot of free food, right? Like snacks and whatnot. I think what keeps them engaged and what keeps them coming back and what has engaged them about the design is, what does this allow us then to do? Right? Like, what is this infrastructure actually, if this is a stage, right? And there's a certain version where this is the stage, what's the show? And they're really interested in the show. And I think working backwards, some of them are taking interest in the stage, but I think that was pretty exciting to find like Youth Build as an organization, as a partner. Those young people are very interested in making stages, right? Perfect. Like they've established this whole infrastructure and community to do that work. And that's something that is so beyond what we could imagine doing. But I think for us, Denzel, one of the kids was saying we were eating some pizza under the tree. And he was like, this has kept me engaged, which I was sort of he said in passing, but it's sort of like, awesome, right? Like he is interested in doing the work. And I think to John's point, it's there are barn raising vibes to this, right? Like what can you set up quickly? And I think being able to eat pizza from like 100 yards and look at what you just did that morning and having it stand there and be like, you feel good. And I think like for us organizationally, how do we create those pride moments? And I think like either through programming, through construction or whatnot. So, I don't know if I totally got that, but yeah.
Thank you. Jeff, I learned a lot from you over this journey we've been on together as in the cohort. And one of the things you said once is you were trying to think about, like as you put it, how they talk about us without us. And sometimes having these really quick phrases like it's like Jaws, but on a bus, or these kinds of things like that people can understand what it is. And so I know you were kind of grappling with that throughout this process. So how do you feel on the other side now, as you were thinking through that?
I read a lot of blog posts. I will happily share the blog posts that were transformative for me about this, how you concisely communicate what you were trying to do. And I don't think we're totally there yet, but teen-led places in public spaces was sort of where we got first, right? And then I was reading a blog post about Mamdani and free buses. And they were saying like the power of that argument is that when you've won, right? The bus is free. It's like, cool, good call, right? Like know when you've won the game. And so we were like, okay, I don't know if this quite captures it, but like this summer, teen-led places in public spaces this summer. And so trying to add some agency and a sense of, kind of time. I also think what that does also help, and I sometimes remember to say it, but this summer after your sophomore year in high school is like an expansive vista. This is the last day of Cambridge Public Schools, right? It's just like if my daughter's going into 7th grade and it's not quite there yet for her, but for the kids that are graduating, it's like, hell yeah, right? It's like summer, and there's so much experience to be had, and it goes by so much slower for people that age than for our age. And so, it's a hard argument to make, but how do you be clear about the transformative growth experiences that can be had, and maybe the density of those that could be had? But I will say, to get back to your original point, it's really helpful to have a soundbite that you can share. I don't think my teens have totally bitten it yet, but I think what's cool is that this summer they're going to be standing there and people can be like, what are you doing? And they're going to have to give the pitch constantly to both people that are very critical and people that are very supportive. And I'm excited for them to navigate that. Yeah, there'll be a lot to navigate.
All right. Wow. Well, I'm going to close us out briefly. I wish we can all sit 100 yards away from something we worked on, eat some pizza, and celebrate it. That's a great sentiment to end on. But really, thank you to all the design grant teams. It has been such a pleasure working with you. And this is just the beginning. You're alumni now. We have an amazing group of alumni from this program, and we continue to stay in touch and collaborate and work together and share ideas, share wins, and move forward. Thank you to all the volunteers that came out, to our charrettes that continue to offer their support, everything that they do to make this possible. And we heard from the teams about how inspiring that work is. And finally, thank you to the staff. This is a team effort, a huge lift. Yeah. Well, thank you all. So that's the kudos. Real briefly before we close, just want to shout out some of our other programs. So we're just starting out the seed program for this year, and this is our call. Invest in that next generation of designers. We have a matching campaign open right now. Scan the QR, look us up for more information. We also have some exciting events coming up. Women Leadership Happy Hour. It's a fantastic event. I know that the staff has some really interesting, fun activities in the works for this year. And this is keeping in theme with our Resilient Futures programming for the year. And then finally, Anna and the rest of the team has been working diligently with our design grant teams to pull together what will be the final report. So this, again, just highlights this continuum of all of our past grantees, these cohorts that build this repertoire of community knowledge and community design practice. So look forward to our 2025, 2026 research report coming soon, and where we get to see that physical documented version of what you just heard today. So thank you, everyone. I think that's all we have for you. Congratulations to the teams. It's been a fantastic year.